Right, this place really does rock. I couldn't believe it when I came across this place. It's really, really fantastic. He says, really hoping they voted him in. So, right, we're going to talk about IOP, PLC, and all the other wonderful buzzwords that comes with making mobile applications that you want to make money from. So we'll start off with, you know what? This is the first time I have used, there we go, PowerPoint on a Mac, so bear with me. Right, so who am I? I am an old fart game developer, way too old for what I'm really doing. I started on Commodore 64 many years ago, which gives you an idea of exactly how old I really am. I've worked on arcade games at Midway. I worked there during their golden years, thankfully, when I worked on Mortal Kombat and NBA Jam, WrestleMania, Revolution X, and a few other games. Then I moved into PC games, where I worked on first-person shooters for a while, like Raven, Soldier of Fortune, Star Trek Elite Force, Jedi Knight 2, a few of those kinds of games. Then I moved to EA, where I worked on The Sims, and I was primary architect for Sims 2. Then after that, I went into, well, actually, I went off to virtual worlds, where I worked at Linden Lab for a couple of years, making virtual penises fly around. And after that, I went into movies for a bit. And then I came back to my gaming roots, and now I work in mobile games, where I port games, and I work on my own products, and I've done a lot in the mobile environment in the last few years. So yeah, I've been around for a while. I didn't work on ELIZA, even though I may tell people I did. And just in case it's important, this line here is really critical. I just thought I'd let you guys know that one. It says I like stellar arthur in case that comes up. All right. So we're going to break this into two sets of conversations. The first is IAP in terms of mechanics. How do you physically implement it? What are the different types of IAP and DLC, and what do they actually mean? And then the second part is going to be what are they actually used for? How do you plug them into a gaming or mobile app? And what are the things to look out for, and what are the things that are bad? Because there's a lot that's bad. Alright, so the mechanics part, let's start with the first part. You get into a lot of buzzwords with this stuff. What is IAP? It is in-app purchase. It is where I am looking at my mobile device and I wish to buy an extra feature or basically an extra feature, or expand out the feature set that I have, or buy some new DLC. That is the act of an in-app purchase. It's the act of the mobile provider taking money from me and the person who's providing the app, providing me with new features. DLC is subtly different. DLC is downloadable content. So the difference between IAP is simply I'm giving you money. I'm giving Apple money, and Apple is telling me that I've given them money, so you better give them a new feature. A DLC is expanded content. So if I want to buy a new level, it requires a new level to be downloaded to my device. I am purchasing something that is not there and present within my device to begin with. When I buy a game, I buy a game with 10 levels in it. If I want to buy the 11th level, it's not already in the game. I have to physically download it. That is downloadable content or DLC. DLC flows from IOP, but is not the same. So what's freemium or F2P? F2P is free to play. That's what it means. And another word for it is freemium. Freemium is basically the concept that your app is free. You don't charge anybody to buy it. The app, when I get it, is absolutely free, and a certain subset of features are enabled within that app or game. If I wish to continue playing, I need to buy either items in the game or more content or whatever it might be in order to carry on playing. The fact is, it's free. Right, we're not going to worry about what is FBI, ASAP, and LOL, because I'm hoping you guys have a clue about that. Why are there so many acronyms? It's because we're nerds and because we don't have any other way of communicating. And the thing about freemium, by the way, is we were doing this back in 1999, or 1996, I should say, with what was called shareware in the day. Duke Nukem did this way. When you got the game, you got the first 3 levels, and they were free. If you wanted to play more of the game, you had to buy it. That's what's called shareware then, or shovelware to some people. And we're doing exactly the same thing now. It's not really changed. So why do we need to do this at all? Why give your app away? Why aren't you selling it? Well, mobile in general is a much cheaper platform. The people on it using it are cheaper, and what's provided is cheaper. You aren't providing a $60 Call of Duty experience on an iPhone or an iPad. You just don't have those kinds of budgets. Kids can afford $2.99 to buy something. That's within range of their allowance. They can't afford $60 on a console game. They get console games for birthdays or for Christmas, or they buy the cheaper $15 version of it that's been sitting on a GameStop for the past year. That's another conversation. But they can't afford to spend a lot of money, particularly on first purchases. And what I mean by that is dropping $3 on a game before you've even played it in this environment today sucks. So they want to be able to play a little bit of it and see whether it is actually something they want to drop money on. Even when it's only $3, when you are 11 or when you are 12, $3 means a lot. So they want to know that the experience is fun before they buy any more of it. So it encourages free before play before play. The other thing that freemium does is it encourages the impulse buy. The fact is it costs you nothing to download this and put it on there. I played for 5 minutes, oh that's really fun. Oh, they want me to play? Oh, what the hell, go on, yeah. It encourages that environment. Kids will respond to that. It's unbelievable how they will. And in fact, you have to be very careful that you aren't gouging kids because, oh my God, it's really easy. And freemium combats piracy. What? So, let's talk a little bit about that. Oh, wait. Yeah, piracy. Sorry, that was in the wrong. Piracy today. The Android platform is rife with piracy because it is so easy. Google made it a deliberately open platform, and as such, it is very easy to sideload an app that somebody else has already downloaded. You just have to get your hands on the APK file and insta-sideload it. iOS actually has piracy too, even though you wouldn't have thought it, it does. It has this thing called Cydia, which is a website which is very much like the App Store, but for jailbroken iPhones. And any good game that's out there is on Cydia, and it's already been hacked in terms of whatever's available inside of the app itself has been opened up for you to play. These exist. The single point purchase profits, i.e. the one-time transaction you have with the customer, he's paying $60 and you give him a game, they are gone for the mobile environment. They don't exist anymore. You have to have alternative methods of being able to take money from people because it just simply isn't there anymore. Like I said, most of the people buying this stuff don't have $60, so you're not going to be charging them for it. Now, there are a few that get away with this. I'm thinking of games like Waking Mars gets away with it, barely. But they can make twice the money they've actually made by putting into this IOP into their system, but that's not what they are as developers. That's not the way they work. But the point I'm trying to make here is that this is not a business plan to follow on mobile, i.e. going with single point purchase. You're on to a loser. A good friend of mine for the Android is a good case in point. He has an app that has a server-based component, and he's tracking how many people are actually coming in and using his game. He's got about 100,000 people from Android actually coming in and utilizing the services, which is kind of interesting because he's only sold 20,000 on Android. That's an 80% piracy rate. Think about that when you're in the millions. How much money have you lost? All right, so we'll go back to this, the mechanics. How does it physically work? Well, the first thing to know about, for those of you who've never done this, the first thing to know about, I walked into this somewhat naive. I thought that the operating system providers would give you a much more comprehensive set of facilities than they actually do. All they do is take money for you. They have the mechanisms to take money. So when you buy IAP or anything on iOS, the only thing that Apple will do is you tell them how much it costs, and they take the money from the person that's playing the game, and then they tell you that money has been taken. Everything from that point on is up to you. You have to open up your services if you, or set up the downloadable content and download it from a web server that you host. Apple won't do it for you. You have to host everything and download it. I didn't realize this when I first came into this. It was a bit of a shock, I have to tell you. So all they do is they just take the money. Everything else is on you. That was a shock, but I just wanted you to know that. That's something to know. So what is the solution for piracy and all that? The solution is basically to make your app free, because then piracy works for you. It doesn't matter if your game shows up on Cydia or something else, because you're giving it away free anyway. You can physically upload it to a bunch of wares sites and pirate sites yourself. Well, why not? If you implement both IAP and DLC, you create a long tail. What that means is you are maintaining the relationship between the person who is playing your game and you. Traditionally, when you buy a game from EA, the only interaction you have with them is when you buy the game initially, and perhaps when you activate it, when you put it into your Xbox. That's the only back and forth you have. With this, with IAP, if you track it, which we'll talk about in a bit, you are continuing the relationship between you, the developer, and them, the player. And it means that you can track what they're doing, what their playing habits are, and actually target what you're doing, stream it towards what people are doing and what they're enjoying. But it does have implications. It means firstly you have to build an app where either you deliberately cripple some of your features on day one, or you have to build an app which you can download new features into without changing the application itself. iOS, for example, is a pain in the arse. Anytime you want to change anything, it's going to take you 2 weeks before Apple will approve it. Android is instant, but the fact is that if you build it into your game in the first place, then it's just a data download. And all of a sudden there are new features enabled inside of your game, and Apple doesn't even get involved at all. It's apart from protecting money. So there's 2 types of purchase that IAP thinks. There's called virtual currency and a direct purchase. A direct purchase is, this hat is $3. Please, do you want to buy it? Yes, I want to buy it. Pay my $3, I now have a hat. That is a direct purchase. Virtual currency is, we have this thing called coins. You buy coins, and with coins you can buy whatever it is in the game. So a hat costs 5 coins. But in order to buy 5 coins, you have to, 10 coins will cost you $1. So you're abstracting the value of what the virtual currency is against real money. It becomes less about this hat costs me $3 and more, this hat costs me 3 coins. And the relationship of coins to dollars gets a little abstract, and I'll explain why in a moment. So there's virtual currency and there's direct purchase. And then there's 2 types of implementation, which is server-side based or client-based purchasing. All right, client-based purchasing is, here is my iPhone. I am playing a hunting game, and I want a new weapon. The weapon is, maybe it's a direct purchase, maybe it's a client-based, I don't know, what virtual currency, but I have purchased a new weapon on my phone, and that's great. I now have an M4 to go hunting with. Not that you'd ever want to go hunting with an M4, but still, the point I'm making. So you've got this hunting game, here it is. But because it's a client purchase, the purchase has only occurred on this phone. It's not occurred anywhere else, it's just on this phone. So now if I pick up my iPad, which has the same game on it, I don't have that weapon on that one. I only have it on here because it is a local client purchase. It only occurred here. So whilst I have it here, I don't have it here. And that's a client purchase. Then there is a server-based purchase. So the server-based purchase is I made the purchase on here, but I, as a developer, have a website that is sitting behind, or web services, something like that, that's sitting behind the game. And when I make the purchase on my phone, it communicates with that server and says, by the way, this person has purchased this weapon. So now when I put this down and I pick up my iPad, the iPad immediately communicates with the web services and says, hey, is this guy got, what's his loadout? What's he got? Oh, he's got an M4. Now all of a sudden, my M4 is available on my iPad. So there's differences in terms of implementation. The client implementation of just, I want to buy a weapon and it's here on here, is very easy to do. A lot of people do that. But we are now moving into the cloud environment where people expect what they do on one device to be the same on another. And that's where you start getting into these services, issues, and things like that. Virtual currencies. Yeah, let's talk about those. There's a lot to say about those, and I've had a lot of experience in doing that. I was actually responsible for Linden Labs' Linden Dollar implementation and wrote their billing system for them, so I've got a lot of experience in this. So as I said earlier, it's an abstraction from real money. Xbox does this with Xbox points. The whole concept is that when you come to purchase something, you don't think about it in terms of real money. I think we've all had that situation whereby here I am using my $400 phone, and I'm looking at a game and it's $2.99, and I'm going, should I really buy this? Should I not? I've spent $400 on the phone, but no, $3. Holy crap, I can't possibly do that. So the concept there is to avoid that buyer's remorse and that buyer's there's a particular word, I can't think of it. It is to avoid that, is to have, they don't think about it in terms of money, they think about it in terms of Xbox points. They think about it in terms of virtual currencies, so it abstracts them. The other thing is, with a virtual currency, you can add to your currency balance through gameplay activity. You can say, well, okay, you were a great marksman, you got 3 headshots in a row, we're going to award you 10 coins. It's great. The virtual currency itself is absolutely worthless, so you can afford to do that, or you want. And so I can hand people virtual currency through the act of gameplay, which is nice. There are other methods you can use with that as well, which we'll get into in a second. You can run specials. Remember when I talked about the abstraction of virtual currency to real money? Well, there isn't a one-to-one relationship. If I buy 10 coins for $1, that means that each coin is worth 10 cents. But I can then start running specials. So I can say, right, well, you can buy 10 coins for $1, but you get 25 for 2. So what's a coin worth now then? Right? What is the actual abstract value of a coin? You can't, it gets very difficult to actually calculate that. So you can start mucking about with what the values are and try and encourage people to spend a little bit more, because they get vastly more. Remember, folks, it's not what you spend, it's what you say. So, yeah, and the other thing, you can do that, you can actually do the same thing actually on the items themselves. So now instead of saying, oh, the gold hat is 5 coins today, or, sorry, 10 coins today, it's 5 coins. Again, that completely messes with the value of what the actual virtual currency is. What's it worth? You don't know. And the whole point of this is to abstract that away anyway. It's interesting because you can actually make it tradable. Virtual currency, you can actually do trade. Like you can in World of Warcraft, where you trade, you give people gold, you can trade things. And you avoid taxation rules. There's no way to actually tax the virtual currency. Although the Feds would very much like to. We dealt with a lot of issues with the Federal Reserve. When I was working in Linden Lab, we wanted to tax what happened inside of Second Life. And every time they came up with an idea, I'd sit down with them, work it out, and work out that it was actually physically impossible to implement it. And they would go away disheartened and come back with another different method that will come up later. Anyway, the other thing is it's trackable. So if you've got virtual currency that's operating on your server, it's trackable. So you can do your cross-platform stuff, as we discussed earlier. You can even potentially go cross-game. You can have this concept. Gree is experimenting with this concept of Gree coins. I have my account with Gree. I may be playing 5 different games, but my balance is available in each one of those games. The problem you have with that, and the reason that Gree is hitting resistance with this, is every game has to have the same scale of value for the coin. If my weapon costs $10 in one game, 10 coins in one game and 100 coins in another, you've got a difference of scale of value there, and that gets very messy. So I don't really see that taking off. Now, we just talked about cross-platform. There's another thing to know. There's some information that's known, and I'm going to chuck this out. It probably won't matter to most of you, but the concept of you having virtual currency on your server means that your virtual currency is now available to you both on iOS and mobile and web and anything else platforms you want, which means that I can buy my currency on Android, but have it available to use and buy things inside of iOS. Now, Apple allows this. They're not very happy about it, because if I bought this on Android, it means that 30% of the money that I'm spending goes to Google and not Apple. And they're not wildly thrilled about that, but they understand that they have to live in the same world as everybody else. What they will do is they will monitor your game and the value of your coins. And if your virtual currency value changes between the Apple version and the Android version, they'll come down on you like a ton of bricks. So, for example, if 10 coins costs $1 on iOS and 10 coins cost 50 cents on Android, they'll be really pissed, because the whole point then is I'll go to Android and buy it because they're cheaper, but then it's available for me to use in iOS. They will not like that, and they will give you grief about that. In fact, what they do is they just suspend you. And if they suspend you often enough, you actually get bounced as a developer. You'll never be able to submit anything to the App Store again. Just be aware of that. You can get around it, and lots of games do this, but you have to be very careful with it. All right. One of the things I mentioned earlier was that you can do third-party allowances of the virtual currency. There are various third-party portal advertising companies like Tapjoy, and what they do is they will trade paying you for an ad impression with virtual currency. So basically, here's my game. I have a Tapjoy button in there. If I press the Tapjoy button and I go to their website and I look at one of their ads, as a player, it awards me virtual currency. I'm going to get 5 coins for every ad I look at. So it's worth my while to go to the Tapjoy and look at these things. I'm getting free virtual currency. But the fact is that you're giving away free virtual currency there, and normally you would sell that, so you're losing value. What you're doing is you're balancing it against the value that Tapjoy will pay you for someone to look at their ad. Every time they get an ad impression, they're paying you $1. So you're providing 5 coins, you're getting $1 for it. Normally, you'd be getting 10 coins for $1. So it's worth your while too. So it's a generation, what you're basically doing is you're trading one set of value for another, but you can do this. And there's a lot of it that goes on in this world. In fact, a friend of mine has an app, and he has 40 different ad portals built into the app. And every day in the morning, he looks at all of these 40 different ad portals and sees what kind of deals they're doing, and literally turns off 39 other ad portals, literally, and turns on one. So each day you look at this app, his app has a different ad portal on it based on whoever is doing the best deal that day. And actual fact is, I mean, it's basically day trading is what he's doing with it. And it requires someone to do this, but he's actually added about $1,000 to $1,500 a month to his incomings by doing this. I mean, granted, it takes him an hour every morning to do it, but still, it's probably worth it. Currency usage write-offs. This is really more information for you, because I don't think many people here are going to like to run into this, although, hell, if you do, fantastic, it's a great problem to have. When people carry a virtual balance, in accounting terms, that is actually a cost to you. What I mean by that, the way to think about this is, if I am playing my game and I have 100 virtual coins in my game that I haven't spent, they're just sitting there, you have to treat them as though what's happened is that someone has bought an Olive Garden gift card. When you buy an Olive Garden gift card, you say you buy a $40 Olive Garden gift card, you give it to Olive Garden, and they get $40, that's great. But you've now got a $40 value in your hand, which I can exercise at any point. I can go to Olive Garden anytime and spend that $40 and have a meal, which means that I'm carrying around a cost to Olive Garden of, well, it's not actually $40, it's less than that, because whatever meal they give me is not actually worth $40, it costs them $40, it costs them considerably less. Maybe it's $30. But the fact is, they don't know when I'm going to do this, and they don't know exactly how much it's going to cost them when I do. I may buy a meal from them that costs $12, or I may buy a meal from them that costs them $17. They don't know when I'm going to use it and how much it's going to cost them when I do. But they know that at some point it's likely to happen. So they do this thing called a cost write-off, which means that for all the cards that are out there, they take a percentage of them and a percentage of the value and say, okay, this is a write-off. We know that at some point in the future, these things are going to get redeemed against us, and it's going to cost us money. And there's a complicated tax thing you can do, which actually gets you tax credits on outstanding costs that are going to happen. It's really messy, but the fact is that in terms of IAP and DLC, your costs come in the case of servers. If I have 100 people out there who are potentially going to turn on a feature that is going to double my downloading stream to their app, that means that all of a sudden I'm going to need twice as many servers as I had to begin with. So I've got this potential cost coming down the line to me of doubling my server load. That costs me money, and I have to know that that's coming, and that I have to be able to write that off against taxes and stuff like that. So this starts getting quite complicated. It's very complicated to work on, because the number of people who actually will use it and the number of people who redeem gift cards is not 100%. I don't know if you remember, did you guys remember when you go to Fry's Electronics and you buy something and there was this big deal of them giving you rebates, where they would give you those little rebate cards and you'd send in your receipt and the sticker off the back of the box or whatever, and they would send you $5 back. Well, I found it really interesting. I talked to some people who worked in that environment. They told me that the actual redeeming rate of those things is between 9 and 12%. 9 and 12% of the people who have those things redeem them, which means that basically a lot of companies got to advertise their products a lot cheaper than they really were when you got to the checkout, and they got away with it. But the point I'm trying to make is that you don't know. I may have 100 people with 100 coins, but I don't know how they're going to spend them. They could potentially do something that will cost me money, or they might not. And it starts getting very complicated about it. But like I said, if this is the kind of problem, this only really rears its head when you've got 1 million users. And if you've got 1 million users, hopefully you're monetizing to the point where you can afford to pay someone who's got experience in this to do this for you. I'm just telling you that it comes down the line. And this is one of the biggest problems with success, that people who are unprepared don't know is coming. Alright, so we're going into, that's the mechanics of how you physically do it. Now we're going to get into IOP usage, which is more game specific and less app specific. And it's in terms of why you would charge someone, under what circumstances do you charge someone and ask them for money? So why do I need to buy this IOP? Why do I need to spend money? How is the game set up to make me need it? Well, there are 4 major mechanisms. Well, there's actually 5, which is DLC, but we've already covered that. There's friction, gameplay limitations, gameplay multipliers, and Kudo content. And we're going to go through each one of those and I'll explain what they actually mean as we go forward. So the first one is friction. Friction is defined as the act of performing something in the game which you can do normally, but which is artificially slowed down or restricted in order to force you to spend IOP and buy virtual currency or buy an item. It's something you can do anyway, but without the purchase it's harder. So for example, faster engines for your Starship. You can get wherever you want to go, but with new engines you're doing it twice as fast. Yeah, that's friction. The fact is that friction really, it's hard to define, but you'll know it when you see it. Alternatively, it's normal game operations that are deliberately made it harder to promote an IOP purchase. Friction might be bad guys being far more accurate than they really would be in the normal. If you had wearing camouflage, it might be your gun jamming more often. It might be just you running slower through the world. It could be a lot of different things. But that's called friction, where basically you're taking a normal gameplay mechanic and you're deliberately making it a little bit harder. Gameplay limitations is a specific limitation. You cannot play the next level until you pay. It is a hard and fast stop. You cannot do this action because you haven't paid for it. That is a gameplay limitation. And that's not what I mean. I don't mean that in terms of, well, you can't throw a grenade at people because you don't have any grenades. That's not what I mean. I mean gameplay stops. I mean progress stops. You cannot go any further until you cough up money. Most people don't do this because it tends to be extremely binary, but people do it. But less imaginative levels do it. Gameplay multipliers. A gameplay multiplier is kind of like friction, but not the same. Friction is something the gameplay is tuned for. A gameplay multiplier enables you to be much better at the game, but above what the game is tuned for. So, for example, I use the example of a shotgun here. You start the game with just a pistol. Well, the game is very hard with a pistol, but it's actually balanced for a guy with a shotgun. So once you get the shotgun, the game is exactly as it's supposed to be in terms of how hard it is and how hard to progress it is. That's exactly what it is. But if you buy the rocket launcher, well, the game suddenly becomes a hell of a lot easier. You don't need the rocket launcher. In fact, you don't really need a shotgun, but you really can't need a shotgun if you're really going to progress properly. But the game is balanced for the shotgun and not for the rocket launcher. So the moment you get the rocket launcher, the game suddenly becomes infinitely easier. The rocket launcher is a gameplay multiplier. The fact that you have a pistol is friction. The two are subtly different. It gets really interesting when you have multipliers in multiplayer, because all of a sudden the game starts getting somewhat unbalanced. I have a rocket launcher, I'm taking everybody else out because they've just got pistols. The game is actually fundamentally unbalanced. And a lot of people spend a lot of time in multiplayer trying to deal with these kinds of issues. When they give you a super weapon, they disable something else in certain circumstances. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's much else to say. Basically, gameplay multipliers, it's a very fine line, but it's there. Then there's Kudo content. Kudo content is purely, wow, look at my willy, isn't it big? That's really all it is. I've got the gold-plated gun. It doesn't change the game mechanics in any way. It doesn't make your gun more powerful. It doesn't make your armor any better. It just means you've got flashier stuff. And the fact is that people buy this crap. Remember the mounts in World of Warcraft? They didn't really do anything for you, but hey, I got a horse! And it's all about this. Swinging your willy about because I've got it and you haven't. And the weird thing about it is it really, really works. You can mix reasons for IOP purchase. So you can make Kudo content and gameplay multipliers. I have the gold-plated rocket launcher. So now, not only have I got a gameplay multiplier, but I've got a way to, besides killing you quicker, I've got a way to stick it in your face. Hey, look at me. Look at this. And then the other thing, we're going to talk about friction, these gameplay limiters. This is the single biggest element that people get wrong is this friction thing. There is a real problem of commerce versus art. The fact is, from a commercial point of view, you've got to look at taking money from people as much as you can. When we were working on arcade games, the idea was that you took a quarter from a player every 45 seconds. And Mortal Kombat was just the best at that because the games didn't last longer than 45 seconds. Somebody lost, somebody has to put in money. NBA Jam, it lasted a bit longer, but the whole concept was to take money from people. Well, that's what you need to do with IOP, but you shouldn't be doing it every 45 seconds. But the thing is, you have to balance. The balance of, yeah, you know what, I need to make you earn something versus it's just easier to buy it, can get very tricky, and it's also kind of a personal level too as well. Individuals, some people may see it as reasonable and some people may not. It gets very difficult to get that right. There is an interesting problem of when what you classify as friction becomes a gameplay limiter. The example I've got here is this. I can travel around in my ship and I can shoot things, my spaceship, and I can shoot things. But really, in order to really play the game, I need to upgrade my ship. The upgrading costs about 100 coins. But the fact is, 100k coins. But the idea is, for my grinding, I'm going to take out asteroids, and I get 100 coins for every asteroid. Well, in order to really hit that number, that 100k number, that means I'm going to be grinding for months. So whilst it is still friction, yes, I can still get there. Effectively, it is a gameplay limiter because of the fact that the numbers are so wildly out of whack. The ratio is so great that effectively it becomes a limiter. People say, well, no, you can get there if you really want to hard enough. Nobody wants to spend all their time killing rats in WoW or just mining asteroids in Eve, yeah? Nobody wants to do that. Friction and gameplay limiters need to make sense within the context of the game. This is where games get very different from normal apps. If you're providing a normal app, there's some guys here who do hiring guys, yeah? Right, so just for argument's sake, I'm not suggesting this is it, but just for argument's sake, with an app, right, you can look people's resumes up and you go away and you get these resumes and you put them in one place and people pay you for a service. So you may give people 5 lookups for free. And then at that point onwards, you're going to charge them for every lookup, or you buy banks of 10 lookups for $1 or whatever it might be, right? That is understood. You are providing a service. People understand from day one that this is going to cost them money to use this because this is not free. They get that. There's this maturity concept and people understand that. For a game, you are inviting people to participate in a fiction that you have developed. It might be a narrative-based fiction like Call of Duty. It might be a gameplay-based fiction like Angry Birds. But the fact is, you are asking people to enmesh themselves in a narrative. The moment you put the brakes on that narrative of what's happening, the moment you put the brakes on it and you introduce this friction concept or a gameplay limiter, people get upset. Why can't I play? I just want to play. They're involved in that. And the problem you run into is that sometimes you put limiters or friction on things that are wholly artificial barriers. You introduced it in an artificial way. A natural way of a friction or a limiter would be, I'm playing a hunting game and I've run out of bullets. Well, if I run out of bullets, I've got to buy some more. Okay, so I'm going to have to spend some virtual currency and buy some bullets. That is a natural, understandable thing that you have to do. No one's surprised when that happens. But and it's the same as if you buy gas in a game. I run out of gas, well, okay, I've got to buy some more. However, if your warp drive limits you to only jumping to 1-star system more than 4, that is a wholly artificial limit that the game developers have put on this game in order to make you spend money. There's no technical reason, there's no design flaw that really states, oh, I can't jump 10 systems. It is a wholly artificial limitation. And the weird thing about it is players get this. They understand when they are being gouged and when they're being deliberately stopped from a normal game operation in order for someone to take money from them. They're very sensitive to this. This is why the play before pay becomes really so critically important, because they can play it, they can see the fact that you are attempting to take money from them, and they can go, right, is it worth it or not? Am I actually going to spend this money or not? Is this game fun enough to want to do that? Lots of games get this wrong. It pisses players off on a subconscious level, and it is very difficult to balance, very difficult to get right, particularly out of the gate. which is why I get into this, which is tracking. When you have a server-based system, i.e. the amount of people's money is being spent, you can track what they're doing, where they're spending money, why they're spending money, what they're spending their money on, their virtual currencies, and it gives you a whole bunch of really useful features so that you can see what people are doing, where they're spending their money, and you can tweak your game according to both difficulty level and where you're asking for money from them. It is really, really important. It's very good for taxation purposes as well. It's really, really good because you can modify your IOP costs. You can modify your DLC costs. You can modify even where it comes in. You can turn it off if you want to. You should do anyway. You should have code that allows you to turn it off. And you can do it based on the statistics of what you're seeing in real time. It's really, really rather important if you're going to do this. I think that's it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So the concept here is what I'm saying is that IAP can be really, really simple. It can be just this client-based, I want to take $5 and sell you a hat. Or it can get really sophisticated where you're tracking virtual currencies and you're tracking what they're worth and doing offers and stuff like that day to day. The more you put into it, the more you will get out of it. There's no doubt about that. The more effort you put in, the more you try and switch things and tweak them and all the rest of it, the more you put into it, the more you will get out. There's no question about it. But you have to understand going in, you will need some server back-end support for this, and there exists a whole multitude of third-party companies to help you with this. Playphone will do it, StackMob, Pars, there's a whole bunch of third-party companies that are designed for this, and you hook your systems up to them and they will track all this information for you and present it to you, and also help you with all that kind of stuff. So, in closing, basically, it's worth your time if that's where you're going. It's definitely worth your time to spend a bit of time researching and looking at this and how to build it first, and knowing that you're going to spend some time on ongoing time. It's not just, oh, I'll build it, put it out there and forget about it. You are going to need to spend some ongoing time looking at this and tweaking it out there. Right, I guess, any questions? No? Yeah, sure.
You said you port games from mobile.
Yeah.
Do you port from PC on down or from iOS back and forth to Android?
I do it all. And at the moment, I'm actually porting a game from XNA, which is an Xbox Live and a Surface game, to iOS.
Okay, so are you tasked with adding in-app purchases to these games?
It depends. I mean, sometimes yes. Most of the games already have in-app purchase in them. They usually have it, and I've got to port it from the Android mechanism into the iOS mechanism or something like that. A successful game will usually already have this in there. So yeah, sometimes I've been tasked with adding it. I've done that twice now, and it gets very difficult actually to shoehorn in IAP into an existing product. A lot of people get very pissed off with it. A really good case in point with that is the new version of Plants v Zombies. The new version of Plants v Zombies is loaded with IAP systems, whereas the original one wasn't. And a lot of players are very upset about that. I want the same experience, just prettier. Well, that's not what you're going to get. And the trouble is, we don't live in that environment anymore, and EA is very conscious of that. So, yeah, it can get a bit hairy. Yeah.
It sounds like your preferred IAP would be Bling.
What?
The willy swinging stuff.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's just astonishing how the weird thing with this is there is a group of people out there, a very small group, who will spend ridiculous amounts of money on these things. I was working on a hunting game, and we had this virtual currency inside the hunting game. It was called skins. And we allowed you to buy, inside of this thing, we allowed you to buy, like, it was $1, $2, $5, $10. There was a $50 and $100. I'm like, who's going to buy? You get like 10,000 skins. I'm like, who's going to buy 10,000 skins for $100? Who's going to do it? You know what happened? We had like 8 people who did in the first week. That's $800 that we earn for doing what? Adding one new virtual currency. We didn't have to add any content, anything at all. We just add one new virtual currency bundle package, and we made almost $1,000.
And there was stuff that they could buy with that amount of skin.
It was like you'd never have to worry about buying this stuff again. You know, I mean, you're never going to run out of bullets. You never have to worry about that. But it's like there is a group of people, a small group of people out there who will spend ridiculous amounts of money on these things. And so having that capability to be able to, take the money from these people who frankly have more money than sense. Well, okay, I guess I'm going to do that.
So getting to that, right? This is a segmentation question. I'm the type that would never pay for an IAP ever, and I play the games if they're free, and then I don't play them anymore when they start acting. Does it affect game design? Thinking about the small group of people that's gonna. I mean, I imagine that group wants a different type of game.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're not going to spend money, it doesn't matter what I do.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I'm not playing to you.
That's what I'm saying. So
because
it's a trend towards.
yeah, basically, you are trending towards. I'll tell you a story. I used to be very much like you. I would never buy anything because I'm tight-fisted. I squeak when I walk. My arse is so tight, right? And I would never do this. I'd never buy anything. And then one day, I think I was playing. It was a space fighting game. Sins of the Galaxy or something like that, I don't remember what it was. I was playing it, and it just became clear to me that I was not going to be able to complete the single player experience without buying a new ship. And the grind, this is where I talked about that grind thing came from, and I looked at it and I'm like, this is going to take months otherwise. And I looked at it and I'm like, okay, well I can spend $10 or not. And I did it. I broke down, it was late at night, I'm sure I drank beer, you know, I gave myself every excuse imaginable. And I did it, I broke down and I bought it. And once I'd broken that, once I'd done it once, I suddenly found that it was more palatable to me in other games. Now I'm still tight-fisted, and I won't just willy-nilly go and buy stuff, and I have to really want it, but I will do it. And I feel that you know, most people who absolutely won't do this eventually will hit that point. The trouble is, you have to hit the game that really does it for you, that you really want to continue with, that you really want to. And some of the time that actually comes through peer pressure as well, particularly if you're playing with somebody else. I know a lot of people who've spent money inside of the Scramble game that Zynga does. And the only reason they bought the full version of it is so they get access to the same features as other people are playing. So sometimes it's peer pressure to do that, but yeah. But generally, as a game designer, if you're not going to spend money in my product, why the hell do I care what you do? You know? But more questions?
How do you promote your apps?
Well, that's not anything to do with IOP, is it?
It's Dub Games.
Alright, that is an entirely, completely different brown bag.
Spend money.
You actually, to some extent, yeah, money spending is necessary, but...
Where are you spending money?
Well, that's the question. A good friend of mine said to me that he is convinced that 50%, maybe even 60% of what he spends money on, advertising-wise, is an absolute waste of time. Which 50% is the question? Right, he didn't know, and he was saying, well, that's, you don't do this. Realistically, there are lots of different ways that you can use to get things at the back door, so to speak. One of the ways is you write an article for Gamasutra, or you write an article for a magazine. You do it for free, you do it on spec, and you talk about the development of your game. And it ends up being a thinly veiled ad for your game. People are interested in hearing about mobile developers. People on Gamasutra and GameSource and other magazines, stuff like that, would love to hear about working in a place like this, developing your game, what other people have to say as they walked in, that kind of thing. That can act as a way of promoting your app. Being friends with Lady Gaga helps. You know, anybody who's got a big Twitter following, that actually really does work once you've got the buzz going. Making sure your app is free. You'd be surprised at where you can inject it as well. There are all sorts of different places. I had a friend of mine who had an app promoted by Playboy. His sales went through the roof. I mean, wouldn't have thought to me, I would have thought of that, but you know, hey. So there's lots of different things you can do. But again, I've found with developing apps on mobile is that the development of the app is about 50% of the work. The other 50% is promotion, and I suck. So yeah, there's a long conversation to be had about that. But these are just ideas I'm chucking out there initially. So.
What I hear you saying is PR is more effective than advertising.
Oh God, yes, yes. The other thing to note is that this is again practical experience is that mobile game players are graphics whores. They absolutely are. If they can look on the page, the screenshots that you present on your app, on your iTunes page and the rest of it is massively important, hugely important. It's less important for like productivity apps and things like that. For games, it better be pretty, it better be something that stands out, and that will help you. Because people, like, you've got to look at it from this point of view. There's now what? Almost there's over 1 million apps on the App Store now. How much time do I have to actually look through all of these games? I have almost no time at all. So I'm going to be looking at pictures, no, yeah, okay, maybe, no. And I'm making a decision like that. And it's based on almost no information at all. The only information I have is the visuals and perhaps what my friend may have said about it. That's how they're making their decisions. So PR is massive. This is the reason why Notch is so does so well. There's a whole bunch of developers like that. So, yeah.
Have you seen IAP being offered in a context-sensitive scenario, like, for example, when a multiplayer game, I kill you, and you get offered a revenge package that makes it easier for you to kill me?
I haven't seen that, but it is only a matter of time. The thing about that is, again, game players are notoriously sensitive, and if they feel like they're being bought, which is what you're doing in that situation, it can be considered buying your revenge, whatever, they can get notoriously sensitive about it. It only takes a small vocal minority to destroy your game, trust me on this. So you have to be a bit careful about it, because people will consider that of whoever it is who spends the most money wins the most. They will consider it that way. And believe me, they'll talk about it on 4chan, and they'll talk about it on Reddit and Slashdot and all the rest of it, and you'll get your ass nailed to the wall. And it doesn't take much to be staring down the barrels of the internet, both barrels of the internet. You know, my good friend Adam Orth, for any of you who've been involved in looking at this stuff, my good friend Adam Orth was working at Microsoft as a creative director, and he made a couple of very stupid comments on Twitter, very arrogant comments on Twitter, and he woke up the next morning and was out of a job, and his wife was threatened, and it was just ridiculous because he made a couple of stupid statements about always on Xboxes. So yeah, it doesn't take much to piss off the vocal minority. Yep.
Are there simple differences in the demographics for who actually does these purchases versus iOS?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. Something I should have covered in there. It's a really interesting question. Yes. In fact, there's differences in demographics between platforms, which was something I was really surprised to see. I was working with one client, and again, it was a hunting game, and he offered it both on iOS and on Android, and he offered two different strains of the same game. One was free, which had IAP, you had to buy bullets, you had to, all that kind of stuff. And the other was like $3, and you bought it and you never had to buy bullets again. So you're buying a full implementation with all the weapons on one side for $3, which is very good, or you're getting the free one, and you're buying your way through it. And believe me, if someone's going to start buying their way through it, they'll spend a lot more than $3. We offered both of these on Android and iOS, and we found that it was a 70-30 split. 70% of the people who wanted the game bought the full one on iOS, and 30% of the people got the free. 70% of the people on iOS bought the full version, and 30% went for the free version and spent money on iOS. And the numbers were exactly flipped on Android, percentage-wise. On Android, 70% of the people went for the free version, and 30% of the people bought it. Which is interesting. When what it says is that Android owners are far more likely to get the free version and spend IAP than iOS people are. I know, I just didn't believe it when I went through the numbers and started looking at it. I was like, this is actually true. And when we're talking, a couple million people here, so really.
But did those 30% actually buy IAP, or did some of them? I'm sure there's a certain amount.
Well, we can
play it and then.
Yeah, of that 30%, probably only like 5% actually probably bought IAP. Yes, and of the 70% on Android, we were seeing significantly more purchasing on Android than we were on iOS. I think it's because iOS traditionally started out, there was no IAP when iOS came around, and it is still more of a traditional walled garment, buy your app once and move on. We're moving into that whole IAP thing. We have been over the last couple of years. I think that's becoming way more prevalent, but I think. We have found that when people buy, they will continue to buy. But we have a lot of virgins over here that absolutely will not do it. An awful lot of people won't, and there is nothing you can do about it. Anything else?
I'll just say I have paid for apps before. It's just the purchase.
It's really close to that conversation about, well, I have paid for it before, but yeah, sorry.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, anyway, so, okay, I think that's it.
Thank you, Jake.